Okay, hello and welcome to our first YouTube lesson. Today we're going to be focusing on grammar. We're going to be talking about the colon today. And your learning goal for today, I'm just going to move this because we don't need to quite look at this yet, is as follows. So you want to be able to know and understand the rules for using colons. So what are the rules? Just know those. I'm going to go over that part with you today. Tomorrow, when you come to class, what you want to be able to do is take those rules and actually apply that knowledge. And at the end of the day, what's most important is that you're going to want to be able to correctly use colons in your own writing, and you're going to want to be able to quickly spot errors when you're proofreading. So that's the ultimate goal of this unit. So go ahead and make sure that you have your notebook out and with you so you can get down all the information that you need. And while you're getting your notebook out and ready, I'm going to switch my board over and start with our first rule. So this comes from our Holt Handbook. This is from on page 324. This is Rule 14E. So Chapter 14, Rule E. And the first rule that we're going to look at, or the first kind of instance that we use colons, and this is a colon right here, these two little dots. We use colons when we want to let our reader know that we're going to kind of give them a list. We want them to take note of what we're going to be saying next. Okay, so we have kind of sub-rules here, sub-instances when we use colons. So the first one is we use a colon before listing items. Okay, so let me give you an example. Because another way that we list items is that we'll just, I went to the store and I had to buy eggs, milk, peas. Okay, we just use commas and we go about with our sentence. So what would be different? When do we use a colon? All right, let me show you. So I'll get my example board over here. So when we're using them to list items, and it's different from just like a grocery list. This is what it'll look like. So let me give you an example here from our textbook. This one's way too long. Let me kind of think of one of my own because I don't want to take all my time writing. Okay, here we go. I will be taking the following classes next year. Okay, now I'm going to put my colon in this sentence, and I'm going to list those classes. So English 4, remember, we always capitalize English 4 because, English is, as I say, the best class ever. No, it's a language, that's why we capitalize it. Still the best class. So I'm going to take English 4, history, and then we'll just keep it short. You have a light schedule next year. We'll just say, and art. If only it were that easy, right? Okay, but let's just say 3, for example. So the difference between this sentence and, this kind of list, I am taking English, math, and history. These are both lists, but this is the difference, and this is where we use the colon. I will be taking the following classes next year. If you have a sentence that has a list of items, and you see the word, and the list goes after the word following, or follows. This is kind of declarative. Like, I'm going to be taking these following courses, colon, then the list. Here we just have, I'm taking English, math, and history. It's just kind of a list that flows. A colon is kind of declarative. It's like, okay, I'm going to give you a list, colon, here's my list. There's a different feel to these sentences. So that's kind of one way you can know the difference, and especially if you see one of these words, then you know to use the colon. Okay, so that was our first rule with example. Okay, now let's go to number 2. We use a colon before a long formal statement. That's kind of the second instance. So, again, there's that declarative element in there. So let me give you an example of this. So use a colon before a long formal statement. Make sure that you write that down in your notebook. These are the 3 instances. Also, since this is our first video, give me feedback if this is too small for you, or make sure that as I'm going about my video, if you have any feedback, write it down, because that will help me for future videos. Okay, use a colon before a long formal statement. Let me give you an example of that. Okay, so here is our example for the long formal statement. When we use a colon, so something like this: Abe Lincoln's famous Gettysburg Address begins with these words. Okay, so it's declarative. It begins with these words, colon, I'm going to tell you what these words are, and look, we have that quote, 407 years ago. So write down this example. I think it's a perfect one. Everyone knows this speech, and it definitely kind of shows the declarative element of using that colon. Okay? So, in your notebooks, let's look at this third rule. You use a colon between independent clauses when the second clause explains or restates the first. So, when do you use it? When the second clause explains or restates the first. Okay? Good. So, an example that I have for this rule here, using a colon between 2 independent clauses, is as follows. I'll show you that in a second. I just want to talk some more about independent clauses. We've talked a lot about those throughout the year. And remember, the problem is that you have 2 independent clauses and we don't properly, we say marry them, right? We have a run-on sentence. So when you have a run-on sentence where you have these 2 independent clauses and the second clause either explains the first or kind of restates what's being said, this is when you would use a colon. So here's my example here. So here's a sentence. The student felt she had done something worthwhile. She learned grammar. So as I always tell you guys, make sure that you label your sentences, your subjects and verbs. Very important. So here we have a subject. And here we have our verb. And then here, same thing, we have another subject and verb. Okay, tell me when to stop. Good, thank you. This is where we need to stop. What would I do without you? Okay. So there's our first independent clause. And then our second one, she learned grammar. Okay, so this fits our rule. So our first clause, the student felt she had done something worthwhile. What was it that she done? So it's an explanation of what she did. She learned grammar. So we can put a colon in there. So that's another way to marry those independent clauses. And again, this kind of has the feel like we're stating what she felt like she did. What did she feel like she did? She learned grammar, okay? So she did something worthwhile. It's that statement. And all of these rules, all the examples that I gave you, all kind of have that declarative element to them. The colon, it's that idea that, the first general rule that I told you, take note of what follows. And so in this video, I've gone over kind of the 3 main rules. So use a colon before a list of items, use a colon before a long formal statement, and use a colon between independent clauses when the second clause explains or restates the first. So we covered that. The last thing I'm going to talk to you about is just the conventional uses of the colon. And we're almost done, so stick with me. If you're sick of grammar, you can pause me and go get a drink or something, or go, take a little walk, whatever you need to do. That's the beauty of this. But let me just go over the second part. So colons, and this is in our textbook, so we're on to a different page. let's see. So I have on page 325, so now we're looking at page 325, 14F. So here's 14F, here's the rule. And it states, using colons for conventional situations. So we use colons kind of for everyday useful things. For example, 14F number 1, we use colons when telling time. So, what's your guys' favorite time of the day? Like favorite time? I'm going to guess it's this. Right? Okay, so this is our colon here. So we use them when telling time between the hour and the minute. Okay, so you are all familiar with that. We also use them, so example number 2, in Bible verses. So between the chapter and the verse, so Proverbs, those are my favorite. Proverbs 10, 12, okay, so that we have the chapter and the verse. And then we also, in movie titles, we'll see, so we have Telling the Time, Bible verse. The third example, titles, like, I can't think of any good movie titles off the top of my head that use a colon, but I'll just give you one from our book. I've never even heard of this, but I bet you guys can think of some good titles. Write one down in your notebook. Share it with us in class, next class. So another view, let's see, so this could be a documentary type thing. To be Black in America. So a lot of times you'll see this with documentaries for sure. So movie titles, we see this a lot with movies. And that kind of sums it up for when we use colons. So what you should be doing is go back, get down any rules that you didn't get. You can rewind, look those up. Write down any questions that you have. Be prepared for our next class session so I can help you know when to use these. Like if you have a question about the independent clauses, if you're watching this and you're thinking to yourself, I don't quite know what an independent clause is, let's ask me about it in class and we can cover that. So this is the time. Write down any questions. Be ready. When I see you next, we're going to practice the skills that we learned. All right, so very good. Have a wonderful rest of your day or night, and I will see you soon. Bye.